I want to welcome my guest today on Right for the Roll, the podcast. It's John Stamos. How are
Hello,
you, John?
John. Hey, John. You
Yeah.
you you cast me in probably one of the greatest things I've ever done, and I'm indebted to you, and I'm so happy to be on this podcast because I can thank you profusely for giving me that role on ER. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, but I think that you changed my career. You changed a lot of people's careers, but I don't
I
care about the rest of them. All I care about is myself, and I care about you. And you look great. We've known each other for fucking, what, 30, 25 years, maybe?
maybe more. Yeah, I don't know what
Because,
year it was when you did ER, but we met before that. I
yeah,
think we'll get to that as well.
we'll
Was
get
it
to all
Jake
of it.
in Progress that I cast with Geraldine Leader?
Yes, I think so. I had a deal at Warner Brothers,
Yeah.
and I think that's where we met. But I'm always, you've always been good to me, and I'm grateful that they're still friends. I'm so happy to see you. You look great. You really do look the same
Oh,
because your
thanks.
hair's been white since you were 22, I think.
Well, 32, but yeah, and I ain't
See?
42 or 52 or even 62 or even 72.
How old are you?
I just actually had a birthday in April and I turned 79.
Damn, you look great. Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
thanks. I appreciate it. One of the things that we have in common, besides being Johns, which our
And
name
what?
is associated with toilets and seeking
Yeah.
prostitutes, but neither of us.
We're both
Um,
extremely handsome. I'll give us that.
well, there
You
you
know,
go. But both of us also wrote a memoir.
that's right.
And I would like to start this conversation today to talk to you about your memoir.
Mhm.
It was a fantastic read, and
Thank you.
I read that you had said that you intended to write a hero story. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think first of all, I was like, why am I writing like I have nothing to say, like who am I to write and they came
I
to
had
me a couple times.
I had the exact same reaction. Was like, what?
Right. And then when you started writing yours, did you find like, oh wait, I do have a lot of stories. Like I do have some interesting stuff that happened in my life. And in your case, you did, make a lot of careers so that's interesting to read
Well, yeah,
about as well.
yeah. I mean, I discovered what the book was going to be about during the process of
Right.
writing it.
Yeah.
And so, what was the hero story that you originally thought you might be writing?
Well, I just thought, I was going to write, I did this and I did that and I'm so great. And I,
Yeah,
and I played with the Beach Boys and I was on Full House and, blah, blah, blah. And, I just I got into it. I was like, no, I gotta give it. Why am I doing this if I'm not going to just put it all out there and tell the
right.
truth about it? But, without, it just felt like anything less than the truth was paralysis. Like I just kept getting stuck and I was like, and I read a lot of biographies and and I'm interested in people's lives and careers and I was not writing that. I was just writing. So I just started all over again basically. And I
Yeah.
started with,
Did you write it all by yourself, or did you have somebody that you worked
I
with?
did most of it myself. I had someone come in at the end and kind of polish up some stuff. And it was a friend of mine. And,
I
uh,
was fortunate that I had a person who I wrote it with, and we
uh-huh,
wrote it during the pandemic, and we sat in my backyard at a long table, and
uh,
she recorded these conversations that we had, and that became the source of the book. I discovered through a lot of prodding from Trudy Roth, who's the producer of the podcast as well as the co-writer of the book,
oh,
that
good.
I had to make it more personal.
Right, right,
And
right, right.
and that's what you did. And actually, I glommed onto the phrase hero story because it ends up with it being a story about the heroic work you did on yourself to
Oh, yeah,
become the man, that you are now, father, husband,
right,
sober,
right.
all of
Yes.
those things, which are fantastic achievements.
Thank you, John.
And
Yeah, that's
you
interesting.
know,
It did. I guess it did sort of, and also like more than anything, I wanted to pay tribute to all the incredible people that have put me where I'm at. That, my parents, some of my early mentors, the Jack Klugmans, and, Rickles and Gary Marshall,
Yeah, I
and I
wanted to
loved.
ask you about that as well.
Mhm.
How did you have these relationships with all these old, funny, mean, nasty bastards?
I just gravitated to my dad died when I was, he was pretty young. But my first, real mentor was Jack Klugman, and I always wanted to be on a sitcom. I was on started on General Hospital, and I left there pretty early just because I wanted to be funny. You know, I wanted to get out there and try to. I always dreamed of being on a show like Gary Marshall show. You know, I loved Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy, and those were shows I grew up on. And so going on that show was oh, I finally made, I'm finally working working with a legend. And you know what he did, John? He would make me sit in the writer's room on Wednesday nights or whatever it was, the punch-up night. And that's where I met Gary Marshall, Harvey Miller, Jerry Belson, these titans of comedy. And he would make me sit in the corner and just watch how they would, fix a scene and rewrite scenes. And, Jack would always, where's the love scene? Because in that show, he's playing my dad. He was just yelling at me the whole time. And he used to say the same thing, I guess, on The Odd Couple, where they were just fighting the whole time. So, where's the love scene? But that was just invaluable. And I took that into Full House, which was kind of right after that. So Jack was one. I was a sponge. He used to call me the sponge, and I would just, try to learn as much as I can. And then I became friends with Gary at that point, and Gary suggested me for the role of Jesse on Full House because he was friends with Miller and Boyette. Had done all those Paramount shows, and then Rickles was a guy that I just was around a couple times, and I just paid attention to him. I just love these old showbiz legends, and there's just so much to glean from them. And I just found a lot of times I just paid attention to him. Rickles. When I started hanging out with him, I think people just thought he was dead. They didn't even know he was still around. And he was still thriving. He was still killing in Vegas. And, I became friends with him. We'd go out to dinners, and then his son passed away. And I can't say I replaced him, but I was sort of right there. And I sort of became part of the family that way. And, spent a lot of time with him there. Well, he was a genius. He was the best.
That brings me, we'll jump around and talk about different things, but you wanted to get Rickles on ER during the 4 seasons that you were on ER.
Yes.
And eventually Wells agreed, and they wrote something, and then I made an offer to him, and the word came back to me that he threatened to kill me because the amount of money was so low. I think it was $10,000. Right. But then later on, I think you told me, or maybe somebody else, I don't remember, that in fact he was intimidated by the amount of dialogue, and that he wasn't Don Rickles. He was going to play a part.
He would have won an Emmy Award for that. It was one of the most. It was so well written. You remember? And I think he did, because this is the way I remember it. Is that he did say yes finally, and then he canceled like the night before, and you scrambled to find someone else, and they rewrote the part. What was the comic's name? I remember him, God rest his soul, but he was kind of a cranky guy, and I think he shit his pants in the middle of it because we were all like, somebody pooped their pants, and it was him. God, what was the hell was his name? But it was one of those things where then you guys wanted to kill me because it was literally, I think it was, the day before, and they called and said he's not doing it. And Paul, whatever his name was.
Well, and, I was relieved because I wasn't going to be killed.
No, but I wasn't, because I was going to be killed because you guys were pissed off at me, and I didn't blame you. I don't know, and I didn't talk to him for a while, and he didn't mention it, and it really bugged me, because I really stuck my neck out, and I begged you guys for years, I think, to get him on there, and they finally came up with a good character, and I just wanted it so bad for him, and so finally, he was saying goodbye to me on a phone call once, and I said, you maybe should have done that thing on ER, and I don't need that job. Blah, blah, blah. I said, man, there's some really good actors. I work with Clark Gable. I work with, so Clint Eastwood. I wasn't with De Niro, blah, blah. And I said, okay, all right. And I said, I love you. And I started hanging up the phone. He said, John, he said, I couldn't handle it. There was too many lines, and I didn't want to embarrass you. And I was so, I just started crying. I just, oh, Don, it was okay. I said, I didn't want to do that to you, and I didn't want to do it to myself. And I just couldn't. I couldn't. I'm sorry that I disappointed you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story, John, because there's such an emotional connection between you and these guys, and that you said that I didn't know that Rickles lost his son. and that you had lost your dad, that, you know, nobody replaces those kinds of significant people in your life, but you do fill some of the space for each other.
Yeah.
And the relationship then has a real resonance, which I think is great.
Sure did. Like he was a guy too that I wanted to make proud, and he always wanted me to find. And I'm so grateful that I met Caitlin, my wife, and that he got to meet her, and also Saget. He was, you know, he was very close to as well. And at first he wasn't. You know, he didn't like comics around. He didn't want me to bring comics around. You know, we went to dinner a lot. He would bring, you know, bring your friends, but don't bring don't bring comics. He didn't like to.
Yeah,
I
well,
guess compete or whatever it was. Not that there was any competition for him, but and so but he always wanted me to fall in love because he had this beautiful, you know, love story himself, and it wasn't a fancy, you know, Liz and Dick kind of thing. It was just this solid, beautiful relationship that he had with his wife, and so Bob met Kelly, who he eventually married, and I met Caitlin, and one of our last dinners was all four of us, all six of us at Tony's Taverna, where I met Rickles originally. And and it was one of those great things. And he was so happy that we found somebody that we were going to spend the rest of our lives with.
yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I lost my dad a little. I was in my early 20s, and it's one of the regrets of my life that he never saw me
He didn't see your
succeed. He
success.
never saw me as a father. He never all of the kinds of things that I'm proud of in my life. He never.
You have a son now. You have a.
I have a son who is about to turn 50, and he was seriously ill when he was a little boy, and so he's my miracle. And I also
Oh,
have
that's so
a
nice.
daughter who
Right.
just gave me a grandchild for
Oh, wow!
yeah,
Congratulations, Gramps.
yeah, she's
That must be
almost 8
incredible.
months old, and
Oh, wow!
just like she lives in Denver, and I've gone to visit her and get to know her a little bit 3 times already in her young life.
That's beautiful.
It's very exciting.
It's
But
so
and
weird, you know, when we're younger, you know, when we're fighting to stay alive in this business, and you know, you're trying to find the best casting, the best stars, and we're trying to be on your shows and stuff. Like, and then you know, flip forward to today, it's like, wow, grandkids. My kid's 8 years old. He's the love of my life. You know, it's
yeah.
you know, there was a, and I'm really dying to talk about my audition for that Italian kid on there, because I don't know if you read about it in my book, but I have a funny story about it.
I
And well, we'll get to it because you spend all your time so stressed out about what people think and why you didn't get this role, and then you hold on to that for so long, and it could get in the way of the rest of the work you're doing, and that happened with me a little bit on the show when I, you know, when I finally, when you cast me as Tony Gates, and I had a conversation with John and you, and should we tell that story?
Sure, but I want to get back to the beginning now, if you don't
All
mind.
right.
We'll get to ER soon, I promise.
Okay.
Um,
Stay tuned, folks.
I loved the fact that when you got the job on Full House, you asked them to make the guy's last name not be Irish but be Greek.
Yeah.
And that was an homage to your dad,
Sure.
who was very Greek, and you have a real pride in that Greek heritage, which I think is wonderful. Your dad was a restaurateur, and was his restaurant Greek?
It was, no, but it was like a fast food place, you know, like you know, like on Saturday Night Live, like cheeseburger, hamburger.
Yeah,
My dad was, yeah, he had fast food places, and I worked there. And
yeah,
you know, I would come up to town and audition or take, you know, acting classes and whatever it was. And when I got on General Hospital, I was working on the weekends with my dad's place, and I used to call home, and you know, and everybody would run the phone, and I'd say, you know, I got it or I didn't, and I would say, oh, I didn't get this one. Just kidding, I got the role in General Hospital, and you could hear my dad in the background going, "Tell him you can't work on Sundays. You're my Sunday guy." And no shit, I had to. So I would work on General Hospital during the week, and then work on my dad's restaurant on the weekends. And
yeah,
after a while, because that show was a fast turnaround, you know, unlike, you know, the nighttime shows, where like you'd shoot it, and the episode would air maybe a week or two later. And so my episode started to air on the biggest show on the, you know, the planet at that moment. And then people started coming in saying, you know, can I have wait a minute, aren't you the guy? No, give me a cheeseburger and a thing. And I'm like, Dad, I'm famous. Can I quit? He's like, no. And my dad was a guy who he treated the busboy the same way he treated his best customer, and it was really stuck with me for my whole life. And I kept saying, I need to quit. I don't know why he either kept me there for business or to keep me humble, which didn't work. But I found out later he came down and visited me at General Hospital. And I was talking to one of the crew guys, some guy pulling a cord for a long time. And I was asking him about his family and, Dad, meet Wiley, meet this guy. And he saw that I could handle the, people and the way I dealt with people on the set. And he said, okay, it's time for you to quit. Good luck. God bless you. And, go with God. So it was that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm always interested to know where the dream or the fantasy or the aspiration of having a creative life came from. Your mom was a model, so there was some level of creativity there, but you didn't come from a showbiz family, and
Right.
your dad didn't seem to give a damn about show business or showbiz people.
No.
And fame wasn't important to him.
No.
Good values, being a good person, all of that. But where did the dream to have a creative life come from?
My mom said I wanted to be an actor in between leaving the delivery room to getting home when I was, was born. I was always sort of a ham. I believe now, in retrospect, I grew up in Orange County, and Disneyland was my backyard, and I would go there quite a bit. And I think just the creativity there and the artistry and the magic that I got from going there maybe did it. But luckily it was just something that I knew I wanted to do. And then it, and I played music at the same time too. And I think it's so important to find something young to say, this is my identity. I'm a drummer. I'm an actor.
Yeah.
So it just came early. I'm sure you've talked about it a lot, but did you start off as an actor?
I did. I was a very bad actor, because to be an actor is to know something about yourself. And when I
Yeah.
was in my early 20s or so, I was very busy hiding from myself. So I really had I was a little funny and a little cute, and I had some of the attributes, but I didn't know myself and in any way that was useful
And
to
why
me.
do you think that? Why do you think you have to know yourself to be a good actor?
Well, because all you have is your experience, your imagination, and all of that is very private and personal, and
Yeah.
it comes from a kind of exploration of yourself. And I think that's what's so fabulous about your memoir, is that you really eventually got on this honest, brave journey of self-realizations, self-discovery,
Yeah.
and all of that.
It's painful. It was painful putting that stuff
Oh
down.
yeah,
And when it came out, I remember, and there were quotes coming out and things like, "What am I do? What am I thinking? I don't need the money. Like, what's the point of this? Why did I do this?
yeah,
But I did it for my son, and I did it for, I did it to again to thank the people that put me where I'm at, and
sure.
because they're gone. A lot of them are gone, and then, those stories will die if I don't get them out there. But I remember you being a very good reader. Like, you were very good. Like, some casting directors are terrible, and they'll tank your thing. You were really good at it, and you were funny, which was good
Thank you.
too.
But as soon as it didn't matter, I
Yeah,
could.
right. You were good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you started playing drums very early at 4, and then guitar at 13,
Right.
and you had a little
Yeah.
rock band that played parties and
Yeah.
clubs, not clubs where there was alcohol, but
Right. Yeah.
and so that music was a big important part of your young life. What kind of music was in your house as a child, as a young kid?
Well, we had a record player, and so my dad would mainly my dad's records and stuff. He loved Sinatra, and I loved Elvis, and so we used to say, like, 'cause I didn't know anything about Sinatra, and I said, okay, I'll listen to Sinatra, and you listen to Elvis, and then let's see where we come out. And I said, oh my
Yeah,
God, Dad, I get it. Like, Frank, that was cool. What did you think of Elvis? I didn't like him at all, but I got turned on to Sinatra that way. And then, one of my greatest thrills ever was to, what do you get for your dad, right? I mean, my dad was, as you said, was very simple, didn't give a shit about showbiz or, money. And I always tried to buy him a new car. He drove the same car as long as I remember, and he gave it to me. It was at El Camino, and he would just put a new engine in every year. But I got to take him to see Sinatra, because I knew he loved him. And it was at the Universal, the Pacific Amphitheater, and Rickles was opening up for him. And I didn't know Don at the time, but I was trying desperately to meet Sinatra. And I got word back that if he wants to meet you, you'll know. I'm like, let's put a smoke signal up or something. Rickles goes on, he does great. Then there's an intermission, and his little guy Tony O comes up and says, "Oh, Mr. Sinatra will meet you now." By this time, my mom's into about 17 wines, so she's a little, fun. My dad, so we go back, and my mom immediately sort of tries to jump on Sinatra. And she has some story that he tried to kiss her when they were on their honeymoon or something. And then Jilly Rizzo almost killed my mother, the mafia guy, Mr. Stamos, you're going to have to move, And so we took pictures with Frank. And then my dad was standing off to the side. And I was like, "Dad, come on, we'll get a picture." And he said, No, that's okay. That's okay. And I see Sinatra look at him, go like, "This motherfucker doesn't want a picture with me." Or, "This guy is so fucking cool. He just wants to sit back and let his son have the thing." And it was an interesting moment. And then he came out, and at one point I looked at my dad, and Frank was so incredible, and he was a little teary-eyed, my dad, and I was a little teary-eyed, and we kind of looked at each other. We didn't want to show each other any emotion. Then Rickles comes out, and he's got a list, and at the end of these shows, he would introduce celebrities that were in the audience, and Tony Danza, whoever the hell was there, and someone else, and then says John Stamos is here. And he said, in fact, he's in the cheap seats. He's probably in the grass. In fact, he's probably smoking grass. And Sinatra grabs the mic from Rickles and says, "Smoke one from me, Johnny." And I was like, okay. So my dad that was a nice moment for me and my dad.
That's great. I told my daughter, who sort of had a crush on you when you were on ER, she was even too young for you, that I was going to be talking to you this morning. And she said, "Oh, I went to Graceland, and Stamos's voice is the voice in your headset when you're doing the tour of Graceland."
Right. If you would have told me, that's why I named the book that. I mean, half of the shit I do in my life, and now, and I'm sure you're at this place too with your kids and grandkids, it's just about gratitude. And you look back and go, "Oh my God, how grateful I am for," first of all, we're healthy and we still have our hair, which is good. But we're with the life we've got to lead. If you would have told, I'm sure you have so many of those moments. If you would have told me that, you made Clooney. That guy was a bum before you.
Well, I don't know about a bum, but
he was going nowhere.
I participated in his one successful television show.
Yes, it wasn't.
8 pilots went to the dust.
What's your most what's your biggest? What are your biggest claims to fame? Him and everybody on that show?
I think in some ways I went to the Juilliard showcase one year, and Wells always teases me. I had a thing for redheads. Mm-hmm. And Jessica Chastain was one of the people in that graduating class. And I grabbed her and told her, "You got to come over here and meet John Wells." And we gave her what seemed like an absurd amount of money. I think it was $100,000 to be exclusive to John Wells Productions for a year. And so, that's one of them. But, so many.
You're
right.
Could you see it when someone walks in a room?
Do
you know it?
I think that's one of, if I have a secret
talent,
sauce or whatever that is, I get you. And I can see, like Mariska Hargitay, who was another one. I got her right from the beginning, and I saw that despite all of this strength, there was a broken girl inside there. And that's the part we cast her in an ER. And now she's been on television since I was a brunette.
Did you know? You knew where she came from. Probably where that pain came from at that moment with her mother.
I didn't know that, but I've seen her documentary about her mom. Have you seen it? It's spectacular.
Yeah, one of the best. She's
fantastic. It's great. And
go ahead.
When you first auditioned for Blackie on the soap, the casting director didn't tell you what you were reading for. Is that correct?
Well, I was, no, they did. That was a interesting one because I thought, it was a New York street thug, and I'd never been to New York and I didn't know what that was about, right? I didn't have an accent. I didn't like, where you do, And so I borrowed my mom's leather jacket, which was not like a cool leather jacket, because I loved Saturday Night Fever. I loved Travolta. I still do. And he was my hero, and so I watched Saturday Night Fever, and I said, I need a leather jacket. So I got my mom's, but it was like this puffy, longer cut, like right mid, it was a woman's leather jacket, and but that was the only one I had, and so I got that, and I said, I need to walk like Travolta, like, in Saturday Night Fever, I had to walk and staying alive, and so I went up. I was trying to find some streets that I thought looked like New York. So I ended up at Santa Monica Boulevard over there in Boys Town. I didn't know, and it was like I was looking for a parking spot. I'm a terrible parallel parker. I tried, and people were laughing at me. So then I found this parking lot of a club called Rage. I thought, oh, well, that's good because this character needs rage, So I parked in this thing, and so I get out and I'm working on my walk. I'm sort of walking up and down Santa Monica Boulevard, and I'm getting all these cat calls from guys like, "Woo, get it, girl!" I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, okay," and it was like, what am I doing? And so I burst into the casting office, and when they say, okay, it's your turn, come on in, I burst in the door and I start my lines and I'm moving around, and they're like, whoa, stop walking, just stand still, you don't need to walk. You don't need to speak. And but I was an
actor prepares,
and I didn't need to. I was very raw, I think, and I was very fearless, and I think that's what. Because, and then there was another guy, Brian Robbins, who was an actor and then became a big, executive. And he was from New York, and he was like, yo. And I'm like, yo, what is yo? The guy's, using language that I remember thinking he was going to get it. And I swear to God, John, I had this thought, like, I don't want to hurt the guy, but I want to go to his house because we became friends before. And I want to tie him up in a closet because for the callbacks. And I ended up, getting that role. And it was, it was life-changing. I'm looking at pictures right now. There's a picture of me and Sammy Davis Jr. on there. I wanted to play drums on General Hospital, and they weren't taking requests. Gloria Monty was pretty tough, and Sammy came on, and there was a setup where he was going to sing and play, and I said, Dad, who's this Sammy Jr. guy? Like, Sammy Davis Jr. So we listened to Sammy Davis Jr. records, and he said he plays drums, he plays every instrument, but he plays drums. Talk to him about drums. So I'm talking to him about drums. Mr. Davis Jr., they won't let me play drums on the show. And I had a real conversation about music with him, and I think he got that I was a musician, and I sort of came from an honest place musically. And so he goes, hold on, man. And he goes to the booth, and he comes back out. I'll never forget, he was very firm. He said, just do what I say, man. I do impressions in case, John. Just do what I say. And I said, okay. And so we get on the scene, and I introduce him as the character, and then he gets up and says, Blackie, you play drums, right? I'm like, what? It was totally ad lib. They didn't tell me. I go, yeah. And he goes, get up here and we'll play a little jazz, huh? Okay. 1, 2, 3. He's playing piano. And I'm going, and it was this magical, incredible moment. And I played music on television ever since.
Yeah. And music has been such an important part of your life. I remember a birthday party at your house, which I was happy to be invited to, where a version of the Beach Boys played for 100 people.
Yeah. And the whole cast got up, and Gordon and Linda.
And you looked so fucking happy.
I still am. I just played last week with them, and I'll have the same smiles I did, back then.
Yeah. How did that relationship happen?
I don't know. Same way as all these relationships happen. I just stalk the people until they finally go, okay, let the kid hang. I knew the guitar player of the band. The Beach Boys were my favorite. I grew up just idolizing them, and my first concert and everything. And if you would have told me, and I went to see them in San Diego after a Padres game, and my friend was playing guitar, and I said, I gotta meet him. They said, okay, after Fun, we take a little, we go off stage for an encore, and then we go back on and play Bob Ram. When we go off stage, when you hear the end of Fun, get down on the what's it called, the baseball field, and come backstage. Here's a pass. So they end it, and I jump on I was on General Hospital at the time. I go down on the field, and I hear all this screaming. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I look over, there's about 100 cheerleaders screaming at me. And so I was like, oh, shit. And I started running the bases like an idiot. And I look up on the Jumbotron, and there I am, like with my Jordache jeans and like big mullet hair, and 100 girls gaining on me because I was a terrible runner. And I get backstage just in amount of time, and I'm out of breath. And I look over at my heroes, and they're all looking at me, and they're like, who the fuck is that? And they hear the girls screaming. And Mike Love says to my friend, he says, who's that? He says, the John Stamos. He's on General Hospital. He's a really good drummer. And Mike says, do girls scream like that for him all the time? And my friend said, yeah. He goes, get him on stage. And so I sat in on Barbara Ann, and then they asked me back again. And then one of the first big shows was at the Washington Monument for 1 million people, and Jimmy Page was playing guitar. And I just can't believe it. I can't even believe telling these stories. I feel like I'm talking about someone else, but
yeah, no, it's great, and the title of your book so resonates, as does the title of my book, because it's called Right for the Role.
Yeah, right.
And obviously, it's a reference to actors wanting to be right for the role, but it's also a reference to finding yourself and finding the roles in your life that you're right for.
Do you have? Are there a lot of people? Just because we're talking about casting and seeing, like, I mean, you give a lot of casting advice on here. You must. In the podcast.
In the book, yeah. On the podcast, I don't. This is about you.
I know, but if somebody was listening, like, I mean, you can equate it to me, like, when I first auditioned for you, or whatever. Like, what? I mean, you said, with Mariska, you just saw it, and some people you just see it. But what if you don't see it? And there's got to be some people that you don't see that surprise you, or I mean,
sure.
is it just like as a young actor listening, our actress, like, is it all about that moment reading? Sometimes it's not, right? Like, you could shit up the script and still get the role. And what do you say to some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that we've lost now, that everything is on self-tapes. You have an audition
right.
for 50 years, so you don't know, but everybody has to have a setup at home now, and
right.
And so you lose all of the moments in the waiting room. You lose all the moments when the director is giving an adjustment, and you watch the actor, interacting in that way. And now it's just the audition, and I don't think I would be as good at it as I was in the old days, because when I was evaluating you, I was experiencing you between takes. Almost more than the audition itself, which brings us to ER and your first.
But wait, real fast. Do you sit and watch tapes now with the directors and producers? Like, what's that process when you get 50 tapes in? And is it a drag? Do you fast forward?
I don't get 50, because the only people who send self tapes in to me are people I invite. You can't just send a tape in. So. But in my office, the two young women who are my associates, Kim Wong and Tony Tamietti, which is really fun to say, they watch everything first, and then they send me whoever they think is viable, and then I send to the director whoever I think is viable, and we're whittling it down a little bit. But I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about.
And then, do you bring the person in to after you've whittled it down? Now, the process nowadays, I don't even know what.
Yeah. For a very important part, like back in ER, for the girl who played your daughter, we would have had a call back with you.
Right, and read with her, yeah.
And that still exists. We do that either live or on Zoom. But an important role opposite an important part of the core cast does still get an opportunity to work together, either live or on Zoom.
Has there been moments when you're like, this is the person, and the producer says, no, it's not, and then you go like, I'm laying my life on the line. If you don't hire this person, you have some of those stories?
Yeah, on Shameless. John wanted to hire a particular young woman to play the role of Mandy, who was the sort of best friend and beard to the gay son. And I called him at home that night, and I hadn't done this very often, at about 9:00. And I said, gee, I hope I'm not interrupting your evening, but you're batting 999, but not 1,000. And I think you made a mistake today. And he said, well, bring your choice back in tomorrow. And then she got it. So, of course, then
he trusted you, obviously.
Then she got a series and left after the first season. We had to replace her. So the
guy from the Bear was on that too, huh? What's his
name?
Jeremy
Allen White was on Shameless. Yeah.
Shameless, yeah, right. You found him, huh?
He's done pretty well.
Do people thank you other than me?
Well, you did send me a very good bottle of Italian red wine with a note which actually lasted longer than the bottle of wine.
I'm sure.
The note said, thank you. ER has made me a better actor and a better man.
Oh, that's sweet. Yeah,
I think, your publicist probably wrote it, but...
No. I remember that, and I did it. So I remember, so Clooney had left, and you guys were casting the role of what was the Italian? Malucci, right. And so here's my perspective, and then you tell your side of it, because I know what I knew, and I have this manager, Danny Sussman, who you worked with over the years with Noah and everybody, and Danny said, they're looking for a new guy, and they're interested in you, and blah blah blah. This is it, and I thought, this is it. I mean, Clooney had the audacity to leave and think he was going to make it in movies. Poor guy. I don't know what happened to him, but it was that kind of time. That was that time, right? And so I was like, okay, I got this. And then I get this call saying, just go ahead and pick any scene that you want to read. I'm like, read, because it was presented to me as like, this is yours. They just want to meet with you. And at the time, I was, in with Warner Brothers and Peter Roth, and I just had deals there. And, it was, not long after Full House or whatever. And so I said, oh, okay, pick a, everybody's reading. Everybody. What do you mean everybody? Okay, fine. So I pick a scene, whatever it was, and I learned it as well as I could. And then I remember pulling into the lot and parking, and all the people knew me, and the security people. Hey, Stamos, what are you doing? I said, we're just talking to John Wells about it. Oh, you'd be great for that show. Well, welcome back. We can't wait to have you back on the lot. The whole thing. And then I get out of the car, and there's about 30 guys who look like me, Greek, Italian, reading the part, and they'll look up at me. And in my mind, I was thinking like they were going like, oh shit, Stamos is gonna get this, man. And and then I see Ginny. You remember Ginny Howe, who now is running show business and still a good friend. She's over at Netflix, but she was John's assistant, Wells. And do you remember Ginny?
Very well. In fact, I invited her to be a guest on the podcast, and she told me that Netflix wouldn't let her.
Oh, really? Well, I'm more famous. So then she was there, and she was my manager's assistant too before that. So I knew her very well. And I said, "What's going on? Am I gonna be okay?" And she's like, "You're gonna be fine. You're gonna be fine." And fine to me is the linguistic equivalent to beige. I don't like that word fine. It drives me. It's not So I said, okay, well, and it was the hottest day in the valley. Remember Warner Brothers, and it was 107 or something. And I start sweating, fine. I'm going over these lines, and they look harder and harder, and all this medical bullshit, And so I go in the restroom, and I'm like sweating, and I'm trying to dab myself down, and I'm putting on my face. And then there was a hand dryer there, and for some reason I thought hot air was going to make me cooler, which it didn't. And some woman walks in. She's like, Uncle Jesse, no, Blackie, what are you doing in here? She's moved from General Hospital. No, it was Full House was over. Yeah, Uncle Jesse, what are you? And I said, what do you mean? What am I? Oh, it's the women's restroom. I walked into the fucking women's restroom. I mean, I was a mess. And so Jenny had just gone out to get John a Diet Coke that he loved, his Diet Coke wrapped in cellophane or something. And then I walk in, and it's like everybody, on the planet, you, Wells, every single writer, Peter Roth, you know, all the executives from NBC, all the NBC people were there. And do you remember? I mean, it was the casting room, and it was so fucking hot, and my hands were sweating. And I go to shake someone's hands, and I'm like, "Hey, I got hyperhidrosis. Get it?" It was a medical term for sweaty. Nobody laughed, and then I proceeded to literally just barf and shit and bleed all over all of you guys with this audition. And I do remember this too. It's like, oh, what scene did you pick? 23. And then you said, oh, we have some rewrites on that. It's basically the same. It wasn't. So now I'm looking at a new script, trying to muddle my way through it. And it was the most, and I just like slithered out of the room. And it was the most embarrassing thing. And I get home and you call and I said, well, how did I do? And you said to me something I'd never heard before, and used it since. You said, well, you shit the bed. And I'm like, what? I did? You know, and I knew I did. And you said, look, better luck next time, kid. You know, it was a tough room and whatever it was. And you know, and I got over it. So years go by of me just like avoiding you, avoiding John Wells on the lot. I was doing other things over there. And I was just like, oh my God. And I thought, you know, that was the end of my, you know how you think when you don't get something, actors out there, it doesn't, you know. So I'm living with this thing for years. And then all of a sudden I get a call saying, oh, they want you on ER. And I said, I'm not reading again. I can't. And they said, no, we're just going to offer you this. They have this role of Tony Gates and whatever. My first day, it was a plane crash with one of the famous tennis girls, right, was cast in there. And there was two planes that collided, and I was badly burned up and bloodied and messed, you know. And I'm laying on the gurney, and then John Wells walks up, you know. And I'm like, hi, John, remember me? He's like, yeah. And I said, can I talk to you? And I said, thank you for the role here and everything. And I said, you know, I have to apologize for this years ago when I came in. He goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, remember when I came in, it was so fucking terrible, and I was blood. He said, what? I don't know. No, you weren't. I said, yeah, it was terrible. I couldn't read the lines. I was sweaty. He goes, no, I'm not. Look, you walked in, and the second you walked in, we thought you were too much like Clooney, and we didn't want to do that to you. It was too much pressure, and we said, let's wait for another role. So I lived with that for years, thinking how bad everybody thought I was. And, you know, in retrospect, I mean, that's what he said. And, you know, maybe you have the same story. And then I remember just seeing him talking about me on interviews saying, you know, we were looking for, you know, underrated actors, and John was one of them, and, you know, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, I remember it exactly that same way, except for the one part, which is that I've never called an actor at home.
You did.
To tell them
you did 100%. I remember it. I'll never forget it. And it because I had an answer machine, and you started talking on the answer machine, and then I picked it up. We were friends. You would have called me at home.
I think it was Rickles.
You know that term, shit the bed? I mean,
I don't think I've ever used that term.
Well,
so
but regardless,
but the rest of it is all my memory of it too. It was about too much like Clooney, and you were nowhere near as bad as you thought.
Well, let that be a lesson, actors out there, because
yeah,
you know. So, but it did change my life and my career, and not only that, like I was on the phone yesterday with Linda Cardellini for an hour.
Oh,
and
wow.
We were just talking about it being the greatest time of our careers, and you know, she's done everything, and I've done some things since then, and you know, and we have a text chain with Scott and Maura and Parminder. And we just talk about it just being the best times of our lives.
Well, it certainly changed my life as well. There's
Yeah.
nothing as intoxicating as success.
Yes,
and
right.
and that level of success was just extraordinary. And you know, the part that resonates for me is when John said underrated to describe your work, and I think that was our snobbery about sitcoms
Right.
and soap operas more than it was an assessment of your talent. And you rang the bell at the county fair as Tony Gates, and we were really happy with what you did.
Oh, thank you.
And I think grateful that we had waited and found the role you were right for.
I think so too, yeah. And if the writing was just perfect, you would just come in and do. And every day, thanks to you, you would be working with, you know, Ernie Borgnine or Stacy Keach, as my dad was incredible. And you know, these, you would just never know who you'd get when you walk on the set and you're like, oh my God, that person's playing that role, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you. John, there's just one other thing I wanted to cover before we say goodbye. And that is with the way I always end these interviews. When I was a kid, my mom used to say to me, say 3 words to describe yourself. And because I was a confident, borderline arrogant little brat, I said, I'm me, I'm Johnny, and I'm a boy. Who's John Stamos in 3 words?
I'm grateful, I am lucky, and I am a father.
Fabulous.
You know? And John, you since I did this, you let's go to lunch or dinner on you. Or me, it doesn't matter. I don't even care, but I'd love to spend more time with you. I really am grateful to you. You've been a friend of mine. You know, even before ER, we did stuff together, and you were always very honest, and you're always very real, and you were always very helpful. And I just love you. And I, you know, you changed my life and my career, and part of my gratitude of describing myself is I'm grateful to you.
Oh, thank you. Back at you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
Gramps.